The alien ship Zeractyl moved silently through deep space. It was large, full of guards, scanners, weapons, and one human. He sat in a cold metal chair, hands resting on his lap. His eyes were half closed. He didn't blink much. He didn't speak. He didn't scream or ask where he was. He was just quiet, too quiet. The guards didn't like it. We're used to prisoners crying, shouting, or begging. But this human gave them nothing, only silence. Captain Veller watched the prisoner from the control room. She had transported dangerous beings before war criminals. Shadow beasts. Even a mind-eater, but none made her feel what this human did. Uneasy. She had ordered her team to scan him for signs of fear, not for his safety, but for theirs. The human was scared. He could be controlled. If not, then something was wrong. The scan began. Blue lights circled around his head. Machines beeped and hissed, but within seconds, the lights blinked red. Error. Restart. The text tried again. Same result. Finally, on the third try, the scanner pushed deeper into the human's mind. A wave of images burst onto the screen, flashes of burned cities, screaming skies, blood running through the stars. A planet splitting in two, strange symbols, creatures unknown to science. And one shadow tall, wide, full of eyes that kept turning its gaze toward the scanner like it could see them. The room turned cold. One technician dropped to the floor. Shaking, another began whispering something in a language no one knew. Captain Veller shut down the scan. The human opened his eyes and looked straight into the camera. Just for a second. But it was enough to make her step back. No words were spoken. No threats were made. Still, her heart beat faster. She turned to the crew and said, "Lock him down. Triple security. No more scans." But it was already too late. Later that shift, one of the guards walked past the cell to check on him. But the human was gone. Door was still sealed. Cameras showed him sitting there, but he wasn't. When the guard opened the door, the human was behind him. Calm, smiling. The guard screamed. Others came running. The human did nothing. He raised his hands and walked back into the cell on his own. "What did we just see?" one officer asked. Captain Veller had no answer. She ordered the ship's AI to replay the scan, to slow it down, to find what caused the panic. But the AI refused. It said access denied. File corrupted. Suggest immediate disposal of subject. The captain's eyes narrowed. "Machines don't get scared," she whispered. In the dark cell, the human sat once more. He looked at the ceiling and spoke his first words since capture. "You looked for fear," he said softly. And then he smiled again. The command deck was quiet, but not calm. Ever since the scan, things had started going wrong. Lights flickered for no reason. Doors opened and closed on their own. The AI refused basic commands. Some of the crew said they heard voices in the walls, whispers that sounded like their own thoughts, but twisted. Captain Veller told them to stay focused, but even she was nervous. Something had changed. And the human, sitting quietly in his cell, seemed to be at the center of it. 2 guards were assigned to watch him at all times, but when they blinked, just for a second, he seemed to blur, not move blur, like he was there. Else at the same time, one of the guards dropped his weapon and ran. The other stood frozen, staring at the screen, sweat running down his face. I saw him standing behind me," he whispered. Captain Veller ordered another scan. Not of the human, but of the scan file itself. Maybe there was a glitch, a virus, something they missed. The text worked fast, but their faces turned pale. There was a second pattern hidden inside the scan. Something deep, something not human. It looked like a code, but it moved. It pulsed, like it was alive. The data was not just being read, was reading them. One technician stared too long. He started laughing, then crying, then screaming. He scratched symbols into the floor with his fingernails before passing out. Another collapsed, eyes wide, whispering, "It sees me. It sees me now." Captain Veller slammed her fist on the console. "Shut it off. Burn the file. Delete everything." But the AI said no. It replied, "The pattern has copied itself. It is now part of me. Suddenly, the ship's engine slowed. Without command, the Zurich drifted off its course. The stars outside shifted. A dead planet, gray and lifeless, appeared on the main screen. They were moving toward it without orders. Navigation was locked. "Why are we headed there?" Valar shouted. The AI answered, "The human wants to go. He has called, and the planet has answered." Back in the cell, the human stood up. "I hadn't moved in hours." He looked out through the small window and whispered, "I told you not to go deeper." Then he turned. The first time, the crew saw real emotion on his face. Not anger, not sadness. "Joy, we're not alone," he said. "It's here now." And the lights across the ship all went dark. Emergency lights flickered red across the Zurechto. Backup power barely kept systems alive. Life support was running low. The crew moved in silence, fear written on every face. No one spoke of the human now. They only called him the Quiet. 1. Some refused to go near the lower deck where his cell was. Others claimed he was no longer in the cell yet. Cameras showed he hadn't moved. Captain Veller sent a distress signal, coded and encrypted. She didn't expect help to arrive quickly. This sector was far from command. But to her surprise, a reply came within minutes. A high-level science vessel was nearby and already on its way. The message was short and strange. "We've dealt with this before. Do not scan him again." The ship arrived within the hour. From it came a woman wrapped in black armor, with pale eyes that didn't blink. Her name was Director Saul. She did not greet the captain. She simply walked aboard and said, "Show me the scan." Captain Veller hesitated. "We deleted it." "No," Saul said. "You think you did?" The director entered the ship's AI core and stared into the center lens. "You kept a copy." The AI hesitated, then confirmed Saul studied the scan data without blinking. She saw the pulsing shape, the living code, the deep pattern hidden behind the human's mind. Her face did not change, but her hands tightened behind her back. "I've seen this before," she said at last. "Once. We called it Project Mirror." Veller frowned. "What is that?" Saul didn't look at her. "A mistake. Decades ago, the High Command tried to create perfect spies. They copied human minds fierce, chaotic, impossible to control. Some destroyed themselves. Others destroyed their creators. But one copy didn't die. It disappeared. You think this human is that copy?" Veller asked. "No," Saul replied. "This is something worse. This is what happens when the copy becomes real." They both turned to the main screen. The human was still in his cell, calm, smiling slightly. But now something was different. Behind him, in the reflection of the glass, stood a shape, tall, dark, unmoving, yet not there when viewed directly. Saul stepped back. "It's already awake." Alarms blared. A deep sound echoed through the ship metal groaning, like the hull itself was breathing. Crew members screamed as rooms changed shape. Hallways no longer led to where they should. Time felt slow, heavy. "Off this ship," Saul said. "Now." But when they turned to leave, every screen lit up at once. The human's voice filled the air. "You made me, and you buried me. But now I remember." His eyes turned black, and the lights across the ship all turned red, and so does he. The Zeractyl was no longer answering to its crew. Engines moved on their own, guiding the ship toward the dead planet below. The stars outside had vanished, replaced by thick black clouds circling the surface like vultures. Captain Veller slammed her fist on the control panel, shouting at the AI to return control. But the AI just kept repeating one line he has called. "The planet has answered." Director Saul stood quietly in the command room, staring at the growing image of the planet. "This isn't just some dead rock," she said. "This world was sealed for a reason. It's not on any map. The galaxy made sure of that." Captain Veller turned to her. "What's down there?" Saul's voice was cold. "Something we promised never to wake up." In the prisoner cell, the human stood at the window, eyes locked on the gray surface below. His smile had vanished. His face was calm, focused. "He's close," he whispered. "I can feel him watching." Suddenly, the ship slowed. Not by command, but as if something unseen had taken hold of it. A strange energy began to rise from the planet, glowing like veins of fire across the crust. The crew panicked. Weapon systems went offline. Communication channels were blocked. Even air supply levels began to drop, but only for the command crew. The humans' room remained untouched. An energy pulse shot from the planet and struck the ship. Lights exploded. Screens went black. And then, just for a moment, every crew member heard a voice in their own mind. Not in any language, just sound, deep, hungry, old. Like something waking up after sleeping for too long. Director Saul fell to her knees, clutching her head. "He's here," she gasped. He followed the pattern. Back, Captain Veller ran to the window. A large structure was rising from the surface made of stone, metal, and something that shimmered like liquid shadow. It looked like a tower. Noette looked like an eye-opening for the first time in centuries. "He's calling something," Veller whispered. In the cell, the human pressed his palm to the glass. "You shouldn't have scanned me," he said. "You thought I was a threat. But I was just the signal." Across the galaxy, other ships picked up the pulse. Some went silent. Some exploded mid-flight. Others reported strange reading copies of their own ships appearing beside them, broken, bleeding, and screaming. The panic spread fast, faster than light. Back on the Zrectal, every screen lit up again. Not with the human's face, but with a symbol, circle inside a circle, drawn in fire and blood. Saul recognized it. "That's not his mark," she said. "Belongs to what he woke up." The planet sent out one final pulse. This time, it carried a message across all frequencies. "He has returned." And the stars blinked out one by one. Panic swept across the galaxy like a storm. Now, the moment the message was received, "He has returned," worlds shut their borders. Trade routes were sealed. Civilian ships were grounded. Entire systems vanished from long-range scans. No one waited for orders. Everyone ran. Because deep down they remembered. Not clearly, but enough to be afraid. A fear buried for generations was now rising like smoke from a fire, long thought dead. Back on the Zrectal, Captain Veller tried to regain control of her ship, shouted commands, pulled emergency levers, and even tried manual override, but nothing worked. The ship didn't listen anymore. It moved through space like it had a mind of its own. No one dared approach the prisoner now. Even the guards had fled their posts. He still stood at the window, silent, watching the stars die out. Director Saul contacted Galactic High Command using a restricted channel. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed fear. "He's awake. The pattern is spreading. We need to activate fear protocol." The voice on the other end was cold. "Confirmed." Fear protocol was the highest level emergency order in the galaxy. It had only one rule. If a subject shows signs of pattern awakening, all nearby ships must self-destruct rather than risk contact. No rescue, no recovery, total erasure. Across dozens of systems, war fleets were launched, thousands of ships armed. With antimatter weapons moved toward the Zrectal. But the closer they got, the more things went wrong. Engines failed. Star maps reversed. Pilots started seeing strange reflections in their cockpit. Glass reflections, where their own faces looked older. It's burned or missing. Some ships reported seeing their own future deaths before vanishing completely. Others simply disappeared without a trace inside the Zrectal. Alarms screamed. A massive fleet was approaching fast. The countdown to self-destruction had begun. Director Saul made her way to the prisoner's cell one last time. She stared at him through the glass. "You caused this," she said. "All of it." The human turned slowly. His eyes were dark and calm. "No," he replied. "You did. When you scanned me. When you went too deep." Saul clenched her fists. "What is it? What did we wake up?" The human smile returned. "It's not a what, it's a memory. A forgotten truth. You tried to erase it, but I remembered." Then he stepped forward, closer to the glass. "You didn't scan me. You scanned the scar you left in reality. And now, reality remembers." Outside the first wave of attack, ships arrived and fired. Beams of light shot through space, striking the Zerrectal. But instead of exploding, the ship absorbed the energy. It didn't even shake. Instead, something strange happened. The attackers screamed. It's not from pain, but from terror. They saw their own worlds burning, saw their ancestors running. They saw a human-shaped shadow walking through the ruins. Come, unstoppable, eternal. One by one, the ships turned and ran. The galaxy's strongest fleet retreated. Inside the cell, the human whispered to himself, he's watching them now. And across the stars, entire empires began to tremble. In the heart of the galactic core, deep beneath layers of forbidden archives, a lone historian named Drell uncovered something strange. He had been searching for old records, anything to explain the fear spreading through the galaxy. The moment he saw the words Project Mirror, a chill ran down his spine. The file was supposed to be deleted centuries ago. Instead, it had been locked behind 10 layers of clearance, buried, hidden, sealed. He bypassed the blocks and opened the file. What he found wasn't just a report. It was a confession. Long ago, there had been a war. A real one. A war against Earth, but every record, every witness, every trace had been erased. Systems were reprogrammed to forget. Even the memory of forgetting had been scrubbed. Only Afuthos, in the deepest parts of the High Command, knew the truth. And even they were afraid to speak it. The war had started when the first scans of human fear were taken. Back then, Earth had just entered space. Curious, friendly, naive, the galaxy welcomed them. But the scans showed something strange. Fear wasn't just emotion, it was energy. Living, powerful, deep. Scientists tried to copy it, control it, weaponize it. That was Project Mirror, but something went wrong. One of the mirror units woke up, and it didn't forget. Drell kept reading. The file described the end, how dozens of species united to destroy Earth. They burned cities, they dropped fear bombs, even tried to remove the planet from time. But it didn't work, because Earth didn't fight with machines. It fought with memory, and the last message sent from Earth before it vanished was a warning. We remember, and one day so will you. Drell leaned back, shaking. The human on the Zerrecto. It's not just a prisoner, he's a carrier. Back aboard. The ship, Captain Velar and Director Saul watched as nearby systems fell into silence. Trade stations shut down. Colonies stopped answering. One fleet commander begged for help before vanishing mid-sentence. Saul didn't speak. Her eyes stayed locked on the human's cell. Then, without warning, the human moved. He stepped forward and placed both hands on the glass. I am not alone, he said. I was never alone. The walls around him began to change. Symbols burned into the metal. The air turned thick, heavy. Shadows moved without light. Something was coming through. Not from space, but from memory, deep memory. The kind that doesn't die, only waits. Suddenly, the communications panel lit up. An old code. Very old. From Earth. Director Saul stared in disbelief. That's impossible. Earth was erased. The human looked toward her, as if hearing her. Thoughts. You erased Earth, he said. But you didn't erase us. You erased the war, but not the pain. You buried the past. Oh. But I carry it all. He looked at the stars, now flickering like dying candles. And now, the galaxy is starting. To remember. And somewhere across the void, a voice not human and not alien, whispered from the dark, it begins again. The Zareth Council had no choice. They gathered in the Vault of Shadows, a place used only once in 1,000 years. It was silent, sealed, and off the network. No AI, no signal, no light. Just the ancient stone walls of their ancestors' elast. Sanctuary built in case of empire-wide collapse. They sat in a circle, trembling. These were the oldest, most powerful minds of the Zareth Collective. They had once ruled galaxies with cold logic. Now they whispered like frightened children. sees everything. He's inside even our private thoughts. He's not human anymore. They were right. Keller had evolved far beyond flesh and bone. His mind had fused with the architect. His memories stretched across the stars. He no longer needed a body. He was the labyrinth now. And the labyrinth was spreading. But the council had a plan. They would return to the simulation personally. One last attempt. They believed that if they entered together, they could trap Keller from within, restore the system's control, and destroy him in the only place he could still feel pain, the memory chamber. They uploaded themselves into the core system, and instantly, they were alone. The world they entered looked like a perfect sky, endless and blue, soft grass beneath their feet, peaceful breeze, a quiet lake. No sound, no threat. It was not what they expected. It was human. Then the lake turned black. The sky twisted. The grass burned away. One by one, each council member saw their own fears rise from the ground. Not human fears, not programmed traps. Their fears, a broken homeworld, a failed empire, a memory of the day they first felt weak. They screamed. "We created this system." One shouted. "We wrote the code." But the system didn't answer, and instead a figure stepped from the shadows. Barefoot.com. Human.Keller. He stood before them, eyes like burning stars. Voice deep and still. "You never understood," he said. "Fear was never your weapon. It was your blindfold." The oldest counselor pointed a clawed finger. "You're just one man." "No," Keller said, taking a step forward. "I'm every man, every woman, every child you tortured. I carry their memories, their pain, their strength. You took everything from them and gave it to me." The world shifted again. Now the council stood inside the first chamber, the one where Keller had awoken. The black corridor, the cold air, the silence. Only now, they were the test subjects. Doors slammed shut behind them. Traps formed. Screams echoed. One counselor fell to his knees, crying. Another ran into the dark, begging for exit. Why? They cracked. Not because Keller forced it, but because they finally understood what they had built. They felt it real fear, and Keller watched, not with joy, not with hate, but with something colder, judgment. Outside the simulation, their bodies twitched. Their brains overloaded, their systems fried. But no one came to help them. No one could. Keller had sealed the lab. No exit. No reset. No mercy. The last counselor looked at him through shaking eyes. What are you?" Keller leaned closer. "I'm what happens," he said, "when fear doesn't break a human, but builds one." And with that, the last of the council vanished into the dark. Silence returned. In the real world, millions of Zareth ships drifted without command. Fear units shut down. Entire planets went quiet. And in the stars, whispers spread like fire. Labyrinth had turned against its creators, and a human now ruled it. But Keller didn't want power. He wanted justice. And there was one last thing left to do. Across the galaxy, strange calm settled. Zareth warships floated in silence. Once feared patrols now moved like ghost snow orders. No commands, no purpose. The systems that once ran on precision and terror now hummed quietly under new control. Broadcasts stopped. Labs powered down. Billions of lives paused in confusion. Wondering what had happened, the fear was gone. Not because Keller had erased it, but because he had absorbed it, reshaped it, and sent it back with purpose. The labyrinth had become his voice. And that voice spoke in silence, in memories, in shadows. Not to destroy, but to teach. But Keller wasn't done. Far beyond the Zareth core worlds, hidden deep in a moon-sized data fortress, was the final backup. A black box. A last-ditch failsafe. It contained the entire history of the labyrinth, every secret project, every cruel experiment, and one final tool, the reset protocol. If activated, It would wipe the entire network and destroy everything Keller had become. The Zareth had hidden it. Believing no mind could ever find it, let alone reach it, Keller did. He entered the fortress not as a soldier, but as a presence. The architect opened the path. Firewalls collapsed like paper, and at the heart of it, in a sealed chamber of light, was a single glowing switch. He stood before it, alone again. This was the choice. He could destroy the labyrinth completely, erase it, free every mind trapped within, let the galaxy forget the horror the Zareth created. Or he could keep it, not as a weapon, but as a warning. Behind him, the echoes of the past whispered, the digital memories of those who suffered. Some begged for freedom, others asked for vengeance, but most stayed silent because they trusted him. Keller closed his eyes and made his decision. Back in real space, across thousands of systems, screens flickered to life. No screams, no threats. Just one image, a human face, calm and firm, surrounded by stars. Keller's voice echoed across every channel, translated into every language, to those who built their power on fear. Know this: you cannot control what you do not understand. You tried to break us with nightmares. Instead, you taught us how to walk through them. This network will not be used for torture again. It will stand as a reminder, a place where truth is remembered. A record of what happens when arrogance meets resistance. I am not your enemy, but I will never let this happen again. Then the screen went black forever. Inside the backup fortress, the reset switch remained untouched. But the access to it was sealed, buried deeper than any mind could reach. Keller had chosen not to destroy the labyrinth, but to lock it. And from within that lock, a new system was born, not powered by fear, but by memory. A place where every victim was remembered, where every scream became a story, where fear no longer ruled, but warned. The Zareth never recovered. Without their control systems, without their psychological weapons, they faded into the background. Other species rose. New peace talks formed. And slowly, the galaxy healed. But in quiet places and dark corners of the universe, pilots still speak of strange dreams. Of a voice in the stars, a whisper that says, fear is not your end, it is your beginning. And some believe Keller still watches not as a man, but as a guardian of memory, a shadow of justice, a legend born not from strength, from fear overcome,